two of you. Let's give it another minute or so, see if some folks join us, but I want to respect you all's time since you are on time, and we'll get started shortly. I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves. So we'll do that first. If somebody joins us, they don't need that information like I do. So Nicole, if we can start with you, if you just tell me where you're from, what you're majoring in, what year you're in, those kinds of things.
Hi, I'm Nicole Novak. I am a senior and I'm from Richmond, Virginia, and I'm majoring in anthropology sociology.
Okay. And I'll have to say my son right now is living in Charlottesville. We visited Richmond at times when we've been there. It's a nice place. All right, Frankie.
Hi, I'm Frankie. I'm a junior and I'm majoring in psych and minoring in sociology. I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. But my dad's from Louisville, and you all are in Louisville, right?
Yes, we're in Louisville.
That's awesome.
Okay. All right, great. All right, well, I'll go ahead and start talking a little bit about, first I can introduce myself. My name is Stephen Farr. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources at Maryhurst. I have worked at Maryhurst since long before the two of you were born. I've actually been there 35 years. And I started as a youth counselor. The job titles were a little different back then, but I was a youth counselor, a shift supervisor, a program supervisor, worked directly with clients at Maryhurst for about 7.5 years before I moved into administration. And I've done a variety of things, but I've been in human resources there for 25 years at this point. And the first few years I was in HR, I was also doing some other things. So it's a long story of all the things I've done at Maryhurst. But let me talk a little bit about Maryhurst. We have been around for 177 years. We are the oldest child welfare agency in Kentucky and one of the older ones in the country. We were founded by an order of Catholic sisters called the Sisters of the Good Shepherd. They are an order that originated in France, and we were actually their first work in North America. And we were owned by the sisters until 1998. Then they turned the ownership over to our board of directors as their numbers were declining in the United States. They're still a very active order. They're in 73 countries around the world today, very involved in the fight against human trafficking around the world. But their numbers have declined in the United States, like most orders of Catholic sisters. So Maryhurst does a couple of things. About 6 years ago, we started an outpatient counseling program. And in that program, we have about 330, 340 clients. That's been a very successful program. It's really growing. And it's a big part of our growth as an agency. In that program, we are serving children who are living in the community, living with their family. And we're trying to help them with whatever those needs are. Trying to keep kids in their home, keep kids in school, be successful in school. And so we do individual and family therapy and have other staff who go into those homes and work with the kids as well. What most people know us for, though, is that we do residential treatment for adolescent girls who are victims of abuse and neglect. We have our main campus in Louisville that serves as many as 62 girls. We have 2 programs on another campus, or actually on the campus of another agency, but we operate them, that serves 18 girls. And then we have 2 group homes that serve about 10 girls each. So altogether, we can serve around 100 girls at a time in residential treatment, which makes us the largest provider of residential treatment for adolescent girls in the state. There's a number of agencies that do residential treatment. Most of them focus more on boys, and have, if they serve girls at all, it's in smaller numbers than what we do. So we are always recruiting for folks for a number of positions. The entry-level position where most people start if they've not worked in our field is a position called youth counselor. And what that position is about, so as I said, we have five cottages on our main campus that our girls live in. Then we have 2 cottages on that other campus, and then the 2 group homes. In all of those settings, we have youth counselors who work with our girls. So youth counselors work with our girls in their living environment. And it's mostly second shift work. And we have third shift staff as well. But usually folks that, are coming into this field out of school or whatever, are looking more for the second shift positions where they have more interaction with the clients. It is a role that's all about building relationships. Our girls have not had healthy relationships in their lives. They've had a lot of people who've exploited them in various ways. And we're trying to show them something different from that. Our girls are in the custody of the state, and they've usually been in the custody of the state for quite a while, and that's not worked for them. So I'll just tell you personally, for a number of years, about 15 years, I've been on the Citizen Foster Care Review Board in the county that I live in. I've been the chair of that board for most of those years, and I'm also the vice chair at the state level for the Citizen Foster Care Review Board. Common scenario that we see on those foster care review board cases is very young children who've been removed from their parents, often removed from mom, dads, maybe not even involved. Often mom has drug issues, things like that. And so that child is placed either with a family member, or if there's no family member, they're placed with a foster home while mom does what she needs to do to get her kids back. And often that happens. Mom gets her kids back. They're able to go home. They grow up with mom. That works well. In other situations, those children end up being raised by family members. So Kentucky has the largest percentage of children of any state being raised by family members that are not their parents. So there's a huge number of children in Kentucky who are being raised by grandparents, aunts and uncles, older siblings. The last number I heard on that was a couple of years ago, was 96,000 children. Some children who enter the out-of-home care system at a young age the family does not end up getting the child back. They don't do what they need to do. So the child is adopted by the foster parents that they've been living with. And that can often be a very good situation. They've been with the foster parents a while, they've bonded, and they grow up and have a good childhood. The kids that we serve at Maryhurst are the kids that the system didn't work as well for. A common scenario would be that our girls were victims of abuse and neglect in their home, but nobody saw it. And so it went on for a longer period of time. They got a little older, they got in school, and school teachers or school counselors started to notice that something was wrong. And so eventually Child Protective Services gets called, and that child's removed from their home. But at this point, this child's been through years of abuse and neglect, and they've got a lot of behavioral issues that come out of that. So they'll be placed in a foster home, and they're starting to bond with these foster parents, but they're also acting out. There's also behavior issues that might be difficult for the foster parents to deal with, especially if the foster parents have other children in their home. So what will often happen is the foster parents will end up saying, we can't keep her. We don't think we can handle her, or we don't think it's good for the other children in our home for her to be here. And so they call the social worker and say, come get her. And they get her, and then they take her to another foster home. and then similar things happen there. The girls that we serve at Maryhurst, it's not unusual for them to have been in 15, 20, 25, 30 places before they get to us. So that's foster homes, that's other residential treatment facilities. It usually involves being in and out of psychiatric hospitals a number of times. And every time they were removed from one of those placements, it severed relationships that they had formed. Relationships with foster parents, with foster siblings, relationships with staff in residential facilities or in psych hospitals. So they're in the out-of-home care because of the trauma that happened in their home, but in many cases, the system itself has re-traumatized them. And so the word trauma is an important word that we use when we're talking about our field. Another important word is the word permanency. So trauma is what our kids have experienced. Permanency is what we're trying to get them to. That permanency is being able to go back to their family. Again, whoever that is in family, or being able to be adopted and have a permanent home. Or for an older adolescent, it actually may be helping them prepare to go into an independent living program as they enter adulthood. But for the most part, the kids we serve, again, the system hasn't served them well. There are not as many foster parents who want to take in older children. Most foster parents want to take care of babies and very young children. There are not as many people willing to adopt older children. So when kids enter the system later, the system does not serve them as well. And they will often bounce around the system. And those are the kids we end up with. In the state of Kentucky, they actually have a leveling system for the kids who are in their care. And they assign a level to them and they reassess them every 6 months or so. And it's a level 1 through 5, with a level 5 child being the most in need of services and the most difficult to serve. Historically, those level 5 children were who we served at Maryhurst. Then about 11 years ago, the state came to all the private agencies like Maryhurst and said, at any given time, we've got a group of kids that the system really isn't working for, and they're probably a little more difficult than even the level 5s. And so they put the label 5S on it. The S just stands for specialized. But they said, we're looking for agencies who would be willing to serve these 5S children. Maryhurst was the first agency they contracted with to serve 5S children. Shortly after that, they contracted with one other agency to serve about a dozen boys who have, at any given time, who have that classification. We're usually serving between 40 and 50 girls who have that classification. And we're the only 2 agencies that serve children who've been classified that way. Part of what gets a child classified that way is the number of times they've been moved around. So it's really kids who the system has really failed and they're bouncing around the system. And the state is looking for somebody who can be successful with them. So our youth counselors work with them in their living environment. The staff, and we sort of use 2 terms. Sometimes we call them dorms, sometimes cottages. Historically, Maryhurst called them dorms, but cottages is kind of more common in our field for the buildings that the kids live in. But in a given cottage, you have youth counselors who work there. You have shift supervisors, so that's a promotion above a youth counselor. And then you have a program supervisor that he or she supervises the staff that work second shift in that building. So people tend to start as a youth counselor, and some of them will move up into those shift supervisor or program supervisor positions while they're with us. We have a couple of other positions that people tend to move into. One is called a therapeutic behavioral support specialist, and one's called community support associate. Those are people who work one-on-one with clients. So a therapeutic behavioral support specialist is someone who works one-on-one with a client in our residential programs A community support associate is someone who works one-on-one with a client in our outpatient program. So they would be going into their homes and working with them. And those are positions that pay a little bit more, and again, that people tend to move into. A very common scenario, and we've hired a lot of folks out of center over the years. People come to work for us, they start out as a youth counselor, and they're working for us while they're in graduate school. And some of them will start graduate school right away. Others may want to work for a year and kind of get a little break, if you will. But folks will work on a Master of Social Work at the University of Louisville or at Spalding University, or a Master's in Marriage and Family Counseling at the Louisville Presbyterian Seminary. There's a lot of degrees available in Louisville. And obviously there's a lot of degrees available online, no matter where you live. And so a youth counselor at Maryhurst who's working full-time works 4 shifts a week, twice during the week and twice on the weekend. So it's very easy to work a school schedule around your work schedule. And we will actually even adjust your work schedule around your school. So if you were to start graduate school, and let's say that you were working for us Tuesday and Wednesday evenings, and then Saturday and Sunday. And then the next semester you needed to take a Tuesday evening class, well, we would move you to Monday or Thursday. We would work with you on your school schedule so that you could continue to work full-time, have full-time hours, full-time benefits, etc., and go to school. However, if you're in school and you're saying, I'm not sure I can continue to work full-time, you always have the option of going part-time. Any full-time employee can go to part-time whenever they want to, and essentially go back to full-time whenever they want to as well. We're just very flexible with folks on that because students and recent graduates are a big part of our workforce. So, people who are in school in Louisville at Bellarmine or University of Louisville, Spalding, a number of those will come to work for us while they're working on their bachelor's degree, and then actually just stay with us while they're getting their master's degree. It's, if you're going to get a master's degree in this field, it's tremendous experience. The work that you would be doing would enhance you as a student because the things you're learning in class, you're seeing it every day at work. By the same token, the things you're learning in school is helping you be a better employee for us because of the way you can apply what you're learning and better understand what's going on with our kids. Again, we spend a lot of time trying to help our staff understand the trauma that our kids have experienced and how that trauma affects what you're seeing, the behaviors you're seeing, the fears, anxieties they have, and how to help them work through that trauma. So I've done a lot of talking. Let me stop and see what questions you all have.
I was maybe interested in your summer youth counselor position. I'm only a junior. What kind of experience do you want us to have before maybe applying for that?
No experience required. It's a minimum age of 20. So I'm assuming if you're a junior, you're 20. No, there's no experience required. Actually, it's a good way to kind of come in and see what we're all about and see if it's a good fit for you. It's not unusual for folks who come and work for us in the summer after their junior year, if they had a good experience, just to come back to work for us full-time after they graduate. So if you're interested in the summer, I would encourage you to go ahead and apply. There's a limited number of people that we hire for the summer, and it varies from one year to the next. Some years the number of applicants is pretty similar to the number of positions. Some years we'll get 100 applicants. So we just never know, but I would encourage you to go ahead. We just posted that on yesterday, and one of my staff is coordinating that, and she would be glad to hear from you, and she'll set up an interview. For the summer position, it would just be one interview and with the HR staff. And then if we offer you a position and you accept, then you just let us know when you can start. For a regular position, for you, Nicole, if you were interested, same thing. I would encourage you to go ahead and apply if you're interested. If we were to offer, there would be a 2-interview process for a regular position. And if we were to offer you a position and you were accept, you could just tell us when you can start. So if you're, looking for something to do starting in May or June, there's no need to on our end for you to wait. I would encourage you to go ahead and apply. As you go through this, you may decide you're not interested. But if we do make an offer and you are interested, again, you can just let us know when you'd be available. We have enough of these positions that we have folks starting every month, and we hire a lot of students and recent graduates. So we're used to having a bigger new employee orientation groups in May and June as people are finishing school. I'll go ahead and talk about pay. The summer position pays less. It's $11 an hour. The way the pay works for regular positions, someone without a bachelor's degree starts at $12.25. Someone with a bachelor's degree in an unrelated field starts at $13. Someone with a bachelor's degree in a related field starts at $14. I will say we are looking at the possibility of increasing those starting rates. I don't want to promise that though, because no decisions have been made. We're actually just starting. Our budget year is July through June. And so we're starting to work on our budget and starting to look at whether or not we're going to raise that pay. So I think there's a pretty good chance it would go up above that, but I can't promise that to you. Other questions?
I actually have 2 questions. My first question is, how has Maryhurst been affected by COVID in terms of like working? And then the other one is for full-time regular employees, what kind of benefits are offered?
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the COVID first. COVID has definitely been a challenge to us. The state mandated some things for residential treatment facilities. One being that our kids were not allowed to have family visitation because of COVID. And that's been real tough on our kids. So their communication with their family has been like what we're doing right now instead of in person. With our staff, it's been a challenge. So one of the things we've done when we hire new employees, we still need to do the orientation in person. So what we do is we do this on site, or you can do it elsewhere, but everybody who's starting new employee orientation has to get tested the week before, so that when you come into new employee orientation, you know that you're in a room of people who have all just been tested and they all came out negative. And then we've just had, we strict protocols about cleaning and mask wearing and glove wearing and all sorts of things that we put in place. Now, once the vaccines came out, people who work at Maryhurst were on the 1A list. And so about half of our staff have been vaccinated at this point. We did not require people to be vaccinated. We've just encouraged them to do it and tried to facilitate that. But, if you, right now, you all as young, healthy people are not very high on the list. But at the point you came to work at Maryhurst, you would immediately go on the 1A list so that it would be available to you right away. And that varies from city to city in terms of how that whole system works and how long you have to wait and things. But our employees are on the 1A list because we provide congregate care. Right now we're doing testing every other week, and we're doing rapid testing. So you get tested, 15 minutes later if you tested negative or positive. And even those of us who've been vaccinated are tested. So a lot of protocols in place, a lot to do. That being said, with everything in place, we've had a couple of outbreaks over time. One of the things we said to our staff when this started is, you're not going to catch it from the kids. They're going to catch it from you, because the kids aren't going anywhere. They've been pretty much confined to our campus except for medical appointments. since this started. But you know, for the most part, our staff have been very careful. They've made smart decisions. But we have had a couple of outbreaks and got those under control. And right now we've gone about 3 or 4 weeks in a row where none of our staff and none of our kids have tested positive. But yeah, like I say, a lot of protocols in place. When you come to work every day, you have your temperature checked, you do a screener, like I say, mask wearing, a lot of things in place to keep our staff and our kids safe. And I'll just add to, if someone who works for us does test positive for COVID, and they got it at work, that's considered workers' comp. So their time off is paid, their medical expenses are paid. Fortunately, most of the folks, really all the folks that work at Maryhurst who have tested positive for COVID, the vast majority of them were asymptomatic. And beyond that, most of them had very mild symptoms. So we've been pretty fortunate. So your second question was about benefits for full-time employees. We have health insurance through Humana. There are 2 plans. There's a $5,000 deductible plan and a $2,000 deductible plan. We also have a wellness program through Humana that's called Go 365, and we incentivize that. So if you do the Go 365 plan and you reach platinum status, which is the highest level, your health insurance, if you're on that $5,000 deductible plan, is only $1 a paycheck, because we're paying for the rest of it because you've done the wellness program. So, so we already pay the majority. We pay about 75% of the cost of your health insurance. But if you do the Go 365 and you get to the platinum status, we're paying most of the rest of it as well, as an incentive for you to do the wellness program. Now you might think, okay, well, that must be really hard to get to. It's really not. I've been at platinum status for 4 or 5 years now, and we give you lots of opportunities to get points so that you can move up and reach that status. Dental insurance through Delta Dental, that's a very popular company here in Louisville. We pay for a life insurance policy for you. There's also voluntary life insurance if you want to add more. We pay for long-term disability insurance for you. If you want short-term disability, you would pay for that yourself. We have what's called a 403B retirement plan, which is very similar to 401k. 403Bs are just for nonprofits. And we would match 3% of your gross income into that retirement plan. And the money's invested with a company called Mutual of America. We have a pretty generous time off plan. We have PTO, which can be used for vacation or when you're out sick for 1 or 2 days. We also have a separate leave bank called disability leave that you would access when you're out sick for 3 or more days. So it's for more serious things. And it's there to keep you from having to use up your PTO when you're sick. And it's okay that there's somebody else in your screen. He's okay.
I'm so sorry.
Hey, believe me, a year into doing this, I've seen kids, I've seen dogs, I've seen spouses. It's fine. It's fine. So I think I went over most. Oh, the other thing, benefit that we have, and I don't know, when we started this about 2 years ago, only 4% of employers in the United States had this benefit. So it's still fairly rare, and that's student loan debt payment assistance. And basically the way it works is we give you a choice. I told you that we would match 3% of your gross income in retirement. We will do that, but if you choose, we could actually match that toward paying off your student loans instead of retirement. And the way it would work, you would sign up for this benefit, and the monthly payment that you would be making, we would take that out of your paycheck, and this company would send it to the bank for you. And then the money that we're contributing, they would send that to the bank to help pay down the principal on your loans faster. So that's becoming a popular benefit. Other questions that either one of you have?
I guess another question I would have was, what's the age bracket of girls that are at the cottages?
So all of our girls are like middle school and high school. We don't have any girls that are elementary school age. The average age every time I've ever looked at it was usually about 15, but that is just an average. I mean, we don't tend to get a lot of 11 and 12-year-olds. That's a little more rare. Most of our girls are more in the 13 to 16 range, but we have girls up to 18, and we'll occasionally have an 18-year-old. Now, if a girl's with us past her 18th birthday, that's because she's there voluntarily. She's voluntarily extended commitment with the state to continue her treatment, because on her 18th birthday, she's free to go if she chooses to do so. One of our group homes is specifically for older adolescent girls who are preparing for independent living. So those are girls that the state has said we're not going to place them back with their family. Realistically, at their age, they're 16, 17, they're not going to be adopted. And so the best plan for them when they turn 18 would be to go into an independent living program. And our group home is set up to prepare them for that, to help with that transition. But all of our other residential programs are kind of the full gamut. Now, I mentioned that we run 2 programs on the campus of another agency. Those programs are licensed a little bit differently, and there's a licensing regulation that says the oldest child in the building and the youngest child in the building can only be so far apart. So on those 2 buildings on that campus, we have younger adolescents in one building and older adolescents in the other, and there's some overlap in age in the middle. But on our main campus, we don't group the kids by age, we group them by their issues. So for example, we have a cottage where the primary issue for those girls is substance abuse. And we have another cottage where the primary issue is that the girls are lower functioning. And another cottage where the primary issue is the girls, when they act out, they tend to act out more aggressively. And we have another building where the kids, the primary issue is either they act out sexually, or we also have some kids in there who tend to be more likely than our other kids to self-harm. Now, don't hear me wrong, there's a lot of overlap there. So, you know, the lower functioning kids can be aggressive at times, and the more aggressive kids can be self-harming. I mean, but we kind of look at their history and say, what is the main issue that they've dealt with? And we place them accordingly in a program that has more services around that issue. Other questions?
What are like the main responsibilities of an entry-level youth counselor?
Well, one way I explain it, just to simplify, to say the role is very parental. I mean, you are with the kids when they would be with their parents if they were living at home, when you have them when they're not in school. So you do a lot of activities with them. You know, when COVID's not an issue, take them on outings and go places with them. So the kids they have therapy groups that are, you know, master's level therapists who do therapy with them. But the youth counselors will do more educational groups, and that's based upon what your strengths are. So one youth counselor may say, hey, I can do a group on this topic, and another can do it on a different topic or whatever. We have a gym, taking them to the gym, you know, playing volleyball, playing basketball with them, things like that. You know, sometimes you might be sitting watching a movie with them. You eat dinner with them. And youth counselors are responsible for the dinner. Now, it's not like you have to be a chef. the kitchen sends everything over with instructions. It's more just heating it up, if you will. You'd be trained on dispensing medications. You wouldn't do that initially, but you'd be trained a little bit later on that. Making sure they get their medicines they need. But all of that to say, in the process of all that, you're a role model for them and you're building a relationship with them. I can tell you from experience and from talking to the staff, I know this is still true today. The kids know the schedule. They know who works on Monday and who works on Tuesday and who works on, because the staff matter to them. And, they have their favorites, the staff they're most comfortable with and most comfortable talking to and things like that. And they know what days they work and whatever. And it's really about relationships. I will share with you. So I started at Maryhurst in 1985. I'm still in touch with a lot of the women that I worked with back then. In fact, there was a girl that was there when I started. She was 14 at the time, and she refers to herself as my first child. We're Facebook friends, and a few weeks ago, she turned 50, and I wished her happy birthday, and she replied, and she put 14/50 because we met when she was 14 and now she's 50. And I'm about to have a birthday this month, so I replied with 24/60 because I've got a 0 birthday this month too. But that many years later, she and a number of women that I worked with choose to stay in touch with me because the relationships we formed back then still matter to them. When I had my 35th anniversary at Maryhurst last summer, I posted something on Facebook about it, and a number of my former clients that I'm Facebook friends with responded, and one of them responded and she said, finest man I've ever known. I mean, I teared up, but those relationship matters. We have wonderful therapists who are highly trained. They do a fantastic job. Our kids go to school on our campus. It's a Jefferson County public school. We have great teachers in that school. We have a lot of folks who work with our kids, but nobody spends more time with our kids than the youth counselors. So they really have a tremendous opportunity to build relationships with them because of the amount of time they spend with them. Other questions?
What kind of training happens?
Okay. So when you start at Maryhurst, you would go through a couple of weeks of new employee orientation. There's going to be a number of things that we do during that orientation. Some of it is just kind of introducing ourselves to you and talking about our history and our values and things like that. One of the trainings that you would go through is something called Safe Crisis Management. It's a 3-day training and you're tested at the end of it. Most agencies like us in Kentucky use this particular curriculum, if you will. Part of that training is when a client is upset and they're starting to escalate, how do you interact with them to help get their feelings under control, etc. But part of the training is if they reach a point where they are in danger of harming themselves or in danger of harming others, we do physically restrain them. And so that training teaches you how to do that. You would learn some individual techniques that are a little bit more self-defense, but the focus is on team techniques because that's safer for them and for you. So there'll be 3 days of training on that. There's first aid CPR training. There's training on what's called 7 Challenges, which is the curriculum that we use for substance abuse treatment. And there's training on trauma-informed care. Now, we're in transition with that. We, for a number of years, we were the first agency in Kentucky to move to a trauma-informed model. And for years, we used a model called Risking Connection. But we're in transition. We're about to train all of our staff in a different model. It's called trauma resilient communities. And that's part of a larger effort in Louisville and Kentucky to use that model. So we're in transition on that, but part of your training would be about understanding trauma, the effects of trauma on our kids, and the effects of trauma when you work in our environment, things like that. There'd be some other topics that are covered, some basics of the job, that sort of thing. And then you would move into the role. And there's a lot of training that would occur on the job as you do it as well. And then there's monthly in-service trainings, and some of that is virtual right now, whereas it's more in person outside of COVID. And then there's a monthly review of the Safe Crisis Management training. You review that every month, and then once a year get retested, because we really have to make sure that people keep their skills up with that for their safety and the kids' safety. And there's other opportunities along the way for training as well. But you know, we love to hire folks who have degrees in this field, but our training assumes they don't. So we're pretty thorough on our training, and try to make sure we're giving folks, you know, everything they need. All that being said, I will say to you, some of it you really just have to learn by doing it. You know, when I'm hiring somebody from Center College, I know I'm getting somebody who's pretty intelligent. I can sit and share the policy of what do you do when a kid tries to run away, and you could memorize that policy and you could have it down. But until you go through that experience, you really don't totally understand it. You have to kind of live through it, you know, because our kids will try to run away at times, and there's procedures of what you need to do. And if they get away, you have to call the police and all that stuff. You kind of have to live through it to learn it. And so, you know, you'd always be working with people you'd always have a shift supervisor or a program supervisor there who would help walk you through these things that you haven't done before, that you're doing for the first time. You're always going to be working as part of a team. You know, the youth counselors and the shift supervisors are the people who are, you know, working in that cottage with those kids. However, I mentioned earlier, we have that therapeutic behavioral support specialist position. Every kid who in your cottage who has a TBSS, that's one more adult who's in the building to help supervise the kids. So even though they're focused on one kid, you know, they're available, they're SCM trained, and it, you know, the work they're doing with that one kid frees you up to work with some others more too. So we have a lot of staff, and you know, you'd be working with a strong group of folks. Other questions?
So in the summer, are the hours like consistent from week to week, or do they change every week?
It is what we try to do with our summer folks is to give each person a set schedule and say, this is what you'll work. I'll be honest, I can't promise that your supervisor wouldn't say, you know, wouldn't ask you, can you work this day instead of this one this week or whatever, just because of vacations and other positions that are open and things like that. But our goal with all of our staff, summer and regular staff, is to give people their own schedule, that they would just work from week to week and they know what it is and what it's going to look like. So that is our intention. Again, certainly there are times when supervisors say, you know, I've got some open shifts I need to cover, and they'll ask people if they can pick up a fifth shift for the week, or if they can switch shifts or whatever. But that's an ask. It's not, you know, we don't like change the schedule from week to week. We try to give you a schedule so that you can work your life around it, knowing, you know, these are my work hours and these are my days off.
What's the average number of hours?
Well, so a regular youth counselor usually works 4 shifts a week, like I said before. And so Monday through Thursday, they usually work twice. And I'm talking about when school's in session. and that's like 2 to midnight or 2 to 11. So those are longer shifts. And then they work twice on the weekend. Now, we consider the weekend Friday evening through Sunday evening. If they work Friday evening on a school week, it's the same hours as it would be Monday through Thursday. You'd come in around 2:30, work till 11 or so. If you work on Saturday or Sunday, it's an 8-hour shift, because we take our second shift staff and we spread them out over first and second shift on the weekend because the kids aren't in school. So folks are usually working 8 to 4 or 4 to midnight. So those are 8-hour shifts. Now, when school's out, we do ask people to work 5 days a week. So they work 5 8-hour shifts. So, and those could be in the daytime or in the evening. And that's just kind of worked out within the program. When the kids are out, who wants to work 8 to 4 and who wants to work 4 to midnight? And usually people have a preference, and we can kind of accommodate that. So it goes from a 4 to a 5 week schedule. Now, our kids go to school during the summer, okay? But they have more time off. There's more days off during the summer. So and we know ahead of time what the summer schedule looks like. We know what days are going to be in school, not. And so when we're hiring summer staff, we're factoring that in when we're telling them what schedule we need for them to work. So every summer staff doesn't work the same schedule. Some are more daytime, some are more evening, and you'll have an opportunity to give your preference on that. But it would depend somewhat upon which building you're in and what their needs are. The other thing I would say, when we talk about for this more for you, Nicole, a regular position being 4 shifts a week, full-time status at Maryhurst is 30 hours or more. A regular schedule for a full-time youth counselor is probably going to be, if you just looked at your scheduled hours, is going to be between 35 and 40 hours a week. But you also have to factor in the training. So you're going to have an hour of safe crisis management review every month. At some point, you're going to have an in-service training, and that's usually a couple of hours. There's going to be some staff meetings. And so when you add all those in, you're averaging probably closer to 38 hours or so a week, and that's working 4 days. For folks who are looking to make some extra money, if you pick up an extra shift because of someone's on vacation or because of positions that are open, you've only worked 5 days, and yet one of those days was probably mostly, if not all, at an overtime rate. So that can boost your income pretty significantly. So, if you're coming in and you're going to start graduate school in the fall, you may say, hey, I just want to work my 4 days, that sort of thing. But if you're going to take a year off and start graduate school later, whatever, and you're really just working, just know that if you wanted to pick up an extra shift, most weeks that's available, and that extra shift is probably going to be mostly overtime, and that can boost your income quite a bit from what you might do the math on at that hourly rate. Other questions?
All right. I think if there's no more questions, I just want to thank you, Stephen, for talking with us today.
Let me just reemphasize for
Yeah.
both of you, both for a regular position and a summer, I would encourage you to go ahead and apply right away and go through the process. You know whether or not you've got an offer, whether or not you want to accept it. And like I say, you just let us know when you can start.
And Nicole or Frankie, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to reach out to the CCPD and I can forward those on to Stephen if you think of anything else afterwards.
And also, if you go to our website, there's a page on our website that has all of our leadership staff and our contact information. So you can find me there and call me or send me an email from there.
All right.
It's nice to meet both of you.
Thank you so much. This sounds
Have a
great.
good day. Hope
Thank
the rest
you.
of your semester